Welcome back to part two of chapter 20. So let's get started. So the 1920s are also known as the Republican era. It's known as the Republican era because we have a series of Republican presidents, and business lobbyists will really dominate a lot of Republican Party national conventions. And so this is known as the Republican era. During the Republican era, we see the disintegration of progressivism. A lot of government policies will reflect the pro government ethos of the 1920s. So, Republicans will really advocate for lower taxes on personal incomes and lower taxes on business profits. They will also like to maintain high tariffs as well as support employers' campaign against unions. So, at this time, the government is on the side of business. When it comes to any business issue, really in the 1920s, the government will advocate for businesses instead, or for employers instead of for employees. Okay, it's very, very pro government. And again, business lobbyists would often dominate a lot of Republican Party national conventions. Okay, so corruption in government. So in the 1920s, one of our presidents that we have is Warren Harding. Warren Harding took office in 1921, and unfortunately, Harding's presidency, or his term, is really known for, or his short term in office is known for its corruption. He takes office in 1921, but he dies just 2 years later in 1923. Harding will advocate for tax cuts for the wealthy. He will advocate for high tariffs. Now, Harding, he's known, or his administration is known as being quite corrupt because he tended to surround himself with cronies who would abuse their power for personal gain. So, one example of this is with the Teapot Dome scandal, which involved the leasing of federal lands to oil companies for money. And so, the Secretary of the Interior leased U.S. Navy Petroleum Reserve at Teapot Dome, Wyoming, okay, without competitive bidding. And so the man's name was Albert Fall. So Robert La Follette will call for senators to investigate Albert Fall because the question is, how did he become rich so quickly? Obviously, Fall did it because when La Follette calls for senators to investigate this, his offices are ransacked. And so, one of these scandals, again, that Teapot Dome scandal, where Albert Fall leased federal oil land to companies, and he got a very handsome profit for it. Another thing that Harding is known for was his affair with Nan Britton. And so he has this affair with Nan Britton. Nan Britton ends up having a daughter, and she, writes this book. And I want to say it's called The President's Daughter, but I'm not quite sure, so don't quote me on that. Um, Now, we know now that she wasn't lying because in August 1915, um, it was verified with a DNA test. So she indeed had his daughter. Warren G. Harding died in 1923 of a heart attack, but some suspect that his wife poisoned him to prevent him from being faced with corruption charges. She also did not allow an autopsy. And so some people think his wife might have poisoned him. He died of a heart attack. Okay. So after he dies, Calvin Coolidge ends up um, entering office, and he is elected in 1924. And Calvin Coolidge, again, is a Republican, and he's known as Silent Cal because he literally does not talk a lot. There was one incident where he is at a dinner party, and this young woman was like, "Mr. President, I bet I can get you to say more than two words at this dinner." And he said, "You lose." And he didn't speak to her for the rest of the dinner. But under Calvin Coolidge, all of these scandals, the cronyism, the extra babies, all of those scandals will subside under Calvin Coolidge, but he will continue a lot of Harding's policies, which again favored big business. He was not in favor of governmental regulations, but he was in favor of civil rights, and he wanted the government to aid farms because remember at this time farming incomes are declining and there's been a lot of foreclosure on farms, and so he thinks that the government he wants government aid to farms and farmers. It's under Coolidge that we also get the Immigration Act. The Immigration Act limited southern and eastern European immigration, and he also will pass the Indian Citizenship Act under his administration, which will grant full citizenship to Native Americans, and allow them to retain tribal land. Okay, so going on to the Hays Code. So in the 1920s, we get the Motion Picture Production Code, and it's known really as just the Hays Code. So if I say Hays Code in a quiz, you know I'm talking about the Motion Picture Production Code. The Motion Picture Production Code, or the Hays Code, is really known for censorship. It's passed in 1930s, and it will, or in 1930, and it will prohibit movies from depicting nudity, from depicting long kisses, scenes, or plots that depict adultery. It will also bar scripts that will negatively portray clergymen or men of the cloth. And so it's a level of censorship. It will censor artistic works with sexual themes. And so you start to see a little bit, I will say, of a cutback of some of those American freedoms. And the Hays Code really symbolizes a degradation of American freedom because of its censorship. However, as far as the Supreme Court, as far as the courts and the national law of the land, we do see a new regard for free speech. So, for example, the Supreme Court will throw out the conviction of Mary Ware Dennett, who sent sex ed pamphlets to the mail, and she was convicted. They'll throw out that conviction. They'll also overturn the Customs Service's ban on James Joyce's book Ulysses. So even though at this time we have the Motion Picture Production Code, we do, as far as the federal courts, we do see a new regard for free speech. So people who had been convicted of violating some of these laws, of some earlier laws, things that had been restricted, you'll see some of these things get overturned. Now, in the last chapter, we talked about prohibition and reform movements. Prohibition is definitely a reform movement which grew out of the temperance movements of the late 1800s. And so, as we get to the 1920s, and we see America is changing. There's a larger number, I would say there is more ethnic diversity in the nation by the time we get to the 1920s. We have the jazz age, we have flappers. And so society really, I would say movements in society often have a pendulum effect. So whenever you see the pendulum swing one way, it usually you will see a swing to the right. It's really physics, like everything has an equal and opposite reaction, right? And so whenever you see, we have women's freedom at this time, we see flappers, we have women on birth control, you have the jazz age, you have women smoking, you have all of these things that are happening, and society is definitely changing. And a lot of people will say it's not changing for the better. And so the equal and opposite reaction to that would be a fundamentalist revolt. And that's exactly what we get in the 1920s. A lot of evangelical Protestants feel threatened at this time because there is a decline in traditional values, and you see an increased visibility of Catholicism because we have a lot of immigration. So you get a lot of, for example, Irish who are Catholic. You have a lot of Southern and Eastern Europeans who may be Catholic as well. And you also see an increased visibility of Judaism. And all of that is because of immigration. So, as the nation becomes more ethnically diverse, fundamentalist Protestants, a lot of evangelical Protestants feel threatened by that because they feel that their traditional values are in decline, or I would say, even in some cases, under assault. A lot of fundamentalists, they believe in the literal truth of the Bible. They wanted to rid a lot of these Protestant denominations of their modernism. They want to take it back to the old school way. And a lot of these fundamentalists will support prohibition because they feel that, society is in danger because of this ill of alcohol. So again, prohibition is really fueled by this era of reform, right? And so there's this belief that in a lot of reform movements that society is capable of infinite improvement. And so if alcohol is seen as the problem, then in order to perfect that, you have to take away alcohol. Now, did this work with prohibition? I would say no, because people continue to drink. You get a whole different problem during prohibition. You have, gangsters. Had alcohol not been prohibited, Al Capone probably would not have risen to fame and glory like he did because he made his money selling illegal booze. And so it will fuel prohibition, will fuel an underworld, right? It doesn't stop people from drinking. They just go to a different resource for their alcohol, right? Another issue that they're having now, since they believe in the literal truth of the Bible, another fight that we'll get is with John Scopes and the state of Tennessee. So, John Scopes was a teacher in Tennessee. He is a science teacher, and in his class, he taught Charles Darwin's theory of biological evolution. And because he taught evolution in this, I would say, pretty evangelical Southern area in the nation, he is arrested. He was arrested for teaching Darwin's theory of evolution. He was defended by Clarence Darrow, and it goes to court or goes to trial, the state of Tennessee versus John Scopes in 1925. The jury ends up finding Scopes guilty for teaching evolution in the school. However, it's later overturned by the Tennessee Supreme Court. So while he is found guilty in a lower court, it's overturned in a higher court. I give the example of the Scopes trial because it shows this fundamental revolt that whenever you have the pendulum of society swing one way, where more people are getting rights, the nation is becoming more diverse, women are becoming, I would say, sexual beings. They are taking control of their reproductive lives by being on birth control. And so a lot of things are changing. So you'll definitely see that equal and opposite reaction as far as a swing in the other direction. And again, I apologize for this freezing technical difficulty. I'll be back with part